right, picking up where Casey Kasem left off from Garage Gym Radio, it is the Home Gym Podcast. I'm Jason, or Man Who Parks and Gym, and I'm here with my buddy Mark, better known as Flex Marks the Spot on social media. Lots of stuff since the last time we spoke, Mark. So our last podcast was the one with the F6 beef, right?
Right.
Okay, I don't.
Lifetime ago.
Yeah, I know, right? I've done some things, been some places, slept a little, whatever, but I don't want to relive that. But speaking of F6, I have seen a few different products that he's either teased or have been posted by others or something like that. And kind of one of them was he's working on like a roller J cup. I saw a really cool design of a dumbbell stand that he posted. Have you seen that?
I briefly saw it. I'm not in the market for one, so I just kind of scrolled past it and didn't really look too deep into it. But no, what are your thoughts on that?
I just thought it was cool, different style than what I'd seen before. Kind of looks like he used maybe like a scissor jack or something like that as his inspiration. But it looked pretty cool. But anyway, what I was wondering about on that when I saw it and thinking about F6 or any company really that maybe has had a little bit of controversy surrounding them or something. I know your personal thoughts and are not that deep or anti F6 or whatever, but just if there is a company that you can think of that maybe has sparked that kind of emotion in you where you're like, I don't even want to talk about it, couldn't imagine giving them a platform or whatever. Is there one product, is there something that they could release, something that would like solve a problem that you have, or maybe it's not a problem that you have, but you have like a few different items that you could combine into one that would be like a really cool product or whatever. Is there something like that could turn your head on a company that you've already written off as like never going to do business with them?
Not with F6 specifically. At this point in my home gym, I'm not really needing anything. So anything that I am bringing in is going to be more of an upgrade or just something that's like totally brand new or something that I don't have. F6, with them, if they make something that's better, or functions in a better way than something I already have, and it's not a direct copy of something else,
Right.
For me, I might consider it, but I don't really have any companies specifically that I'm kind of boycotting or wouldn't do business unless they do something groundbreaking or revolutionary. That at least I don't have anyone that comes to mind. I've had a few that I've had some iffy customer service, product control issue or like quality control issues with that I will probably not buy from again, just because I was a little turned off by those. But if they came out with something that was super unique or super cool, it'd still be open to it. How about you? Is there anyone in particular?
I have written God, I feel like such a diva, but I have written off a couple of companies over time. And I know at one point I proclaimed I would never ever purchase from Titan again. I don't think I have since then, but I have definitely lost whatever angst, whatever that was that had me bitter and cold and that declared them dead to me. I don't have that feeling anymore. They just don't have anything that I need or want or interested in or anything. There was another company that we talked about even on the last one that I've written off. It was really had a lot to do with a customer service issue mostly. But then beyond that, they kind of picked up in the home gym space. And during that time, they were making a lot of products that I thought were kind of cash grabs and putting people's safety at risk. And for a lot of reasons, I did discount them, and they've changed a little bit since then or whatever, but I still can't think of anything in particular and kind of like you, I'm at a place where I have everything. I guess if I were, okay, so I have 3, and this is not an invitation for anybody to try to create this, and it may already exist. I don't know. I'm not buying anything. That's what I'm saying anyway. But I have the, what do you call it? The Pritchett pad from Rogue. And it is the best chest supported row rack attachment that there is. It's the only one that exists that you can do like a legitimate chest supported T-bar row and it takes up less space than, even though it's awkward and all that stuff. It's the only one you can do that with of all the chest pads that are rack attached. It's not perfect, right? It's still not centered like they say it is, even when you're using the Monster 2.0 landmine thing and whatever. But
Kind of massive too, isn't it?
it's pretty massive. It's awkward. It's not great for any of the other things. Like you'll see people use it. Like I've seen reviews of people using it and they'll do all this extra. I know that variety is the spice of life and all that stuff. And they say that versatility is king in the home gym. It's not to me. I just want, I mean, if I can get something that does a couple of things really, really well, that's cool. But ultimately, I just want something that does what it's designed to do really, really well. And if it doesn't do anything else, but so like the Pritchett pad, for example, you'll see people say like, you can do like dumbbell reverse flat. You're not going to do that. It's a bigger pain in the ass to do it on the Pritchett pad than it is to do it from a weight bench, because you still have to like step into it. You've got nowhere to like it's anyway. This not a review or a knock of that. I'm just saying, if there was a product that, because I have the Pritchett pad, I also have the Sorinex Bulldog pad, and then I have the Prime Stability pad, right? And all three of those are very similar. There is some overlap between the three, but all three of them do something really well that the other one cannot do. For example, the T-bar rows, right? The centering of the stability pad in my functional trainer space, and then the Sorinex Bulldog pad. It's just as simple. It's lightweight. It's got I can still use it on my facing the rack or away from the rack or whatever, and my cable can run through it and all that stuff. It serves a purpose also. If there was something that maybe I could condense all three of those down and it not be big and awkward and a pain in the ass and weird and funky and all that kind of stuff, I could see myself maybe I could do something like that. But I don't know. I think I have a hard time with this question, even though I just asked it, because there's just not a lot of things that I don't have or value. I mean, it's not like I'm ever like, man, I really wish I had one of these instead of three, but maybe that's something that could turn my head. I don't know.
Yeah. And for me at this point, and obviously, mentioned I would only be looking at upgrades or things that do better or function better than things I already have. But another thing that would actually make me consider upgrading some of these existing pieces is if like there was a product that was like smaller and lighter without sacrificing quality, I guess,
Right. Yeah.
So like something that comes to mind is, obviously you have like the super beefy, 150-pound, nearly 150-pound benches at flagship benches that everyone has, adjustable benches, but something like so. Okay, so yeah, we had a technical difficulty. Obviously, camera quality switched a little bit. So what I was saying was, if I were to upgrade something in my gym, it would be upgrading to something that is not sacrificing quality, but is a little bit more compact and lightweight. So I think we might have mentioned this on maybe the last one, that or maybe not. I'm a loser and talk way too much home gym stuff with way too many people, so it might not have even been a conversation I had here. But yeah, like not everything needs to be super overbuilt, right? Like we don't need everything that's that's like, yeah, just basically super overbuilt. So like maybe if there was like an adjustable bench that was like maybe just 100 pounds, right, or even less. Like honestly, I'd be fine with something like around like 85 pounds, but doesn't really it doesn't feel cheap to use. I would probably consider upgrading from my my rep 5200, because I mean I've had no issues with it. It's fine, but just storing it and moving it around when I'm doing like non bench related exercises can be a little bit of an issue. Like especially with me in my space, I have a platform that I do like 90% of my lifting on, right? So I have to maneuver the bench within that area. And then if I take it off the platform, then I'm kind of on in a carpeted area. And, that's kind of a me problem specifically, not so much the bench being overbuilt or anything like that, but even just trying to maneuver it around and kind of storing it away on the platform is a little bit annoying just because of how big it is. And I know there's like tons of benches that are even like flagship benches that are even way bigger than that. So that would be something that, I would probably consider upgrading to.
Yeah, you just described the shorty bench from Prime Fitness. Yeah, I know. So sorry to the Reddit guy, but it's lighter, still built, and it's really the best bench for everything that is non-bench press related. It's like the best accessory bench. I actually don't mind it for bench press. It's just for someone who, like, I know you like to, you have your self-described training ADD or whatever, where you might be doing strongman one day, Olympic lifts one day, powerlifting another day, and that kind of a thing. And I know for a lot of people, they like a 12-inch wide and super grippy bench for pumping up their numbers or whatever. And this is not the bench for that. But anyway, again, not a
Not an ad.
endorsement for just when as you're describing it, I'm like, yep, shorty bench, shorty bench, shorty bench. So anyway, but yeah, I'm with you. I like it's probably upgrading more so than adding things or coming up with some new product thing that would turn my head. So I could see that also.
So yeah, speaking of new products and Prime Fitness, do we want to talk about the SmartArm that just released? That
Not really.
They've been teasing for how long at this point?
They've been teasing it for a long time, and they did recently release it. I actually got it. So I was out last week in the British Virgin Islands, not to be confused with the Whore Islands that are on the other side of the ocean, also owned by the Brits. But it showed up while I was there. I got it on the early release. I didn't actually end up getting it into my possession until today. But in the meantime, and you may have seen this already too, there have been a couple of others who got it kind of early release. And they did early release, and then they did the full release the very next day. So, and everybody's like shipped at the same time. So I'm not sure if that was like a new concept they were trying out, or if it's because people like me screwed it up, didn't realize that an early release was only for select individuals. I never got an email or anything. I just, you could Google it. So I made like an announcement and sent it out to a lot of the people that I knew who were waiting on it. And anyway, so maybe that's, I don't know, but I did get it today. In the meantime, those who got it kind of late last week and stuff have been playing with it and have kind of exposed a couple of issues. I got an email today from Jared, who's the CEO, and a super down to earth guy. He's really honest and upfront and transparent, and I like that I can give him raw feedback, and tell him stuff, and he takes it and he does the best that he can to work with it. So I actually spent a good part of today kind of working through some of the kinks and trying to, me and a couple of other people, not just me, me and a couple of other people on kind of a thread with Jared, kind of working through some issues that a couple of the others have encountered over the last couple of days, and trying some different things to figure out what is the best approach for making sure that people don't have to be a super nerd in order to make it work for them, or that people aren't going to get it and just immediately
Have to
think
kind
like
of DIY workarounds.
that kind of stuff. Like I'm like doing the best I can to come up with a solution that doesn't feel or look like a DIY workaround for things.
So
And
yeah,
then I'm also like, so for example,
yeah.
on the third, I'm sure you've seen it. It's got the same SmartArm system that they have, a smart technology that they use on their plate loaded system, where it has like 3 different weight horns, depending on where you load your weight in the front, middle, or end. It will load the resistance through that range of motion in that area.
Right.
And
So,
it kind of uses gravity.
You can emphasize either like the different parts of the range of motion, right?
Yeah. So like, for example, in a bicep curl, if you put it on the top end or whatever, it might feel heaviest in the very beginning of the lift, and then taper off as it gets to the top. In the middle, it'll feel heaviest in the middle of the lift, and then on the end, it'll feel lighter and get heavier as you get to the end. So, and then you can kind of play around with where putting it like first and second and things like that, and just play around with the strength curve to really kind of hyper focus on that particular muscle. And so in some of it, maybe with setup, some of it maybe it's not designed to use a 45-pound plate or something like that on the third horn. But the issue that I was able to recreate, one of the guys was the way he had it set up, the actual SmartArm itself was hitting the upright in the topmost position when using the bicep curl. I was not able to replicate that. I tried several different, well, let me rephrase that. The only way that I was able to replicate that was to set the cam and the position of everything up in a way that felt really, really funky to me. My elbows had to be like behind the axis of rotation. I had to almost even like move myself back and lift it into place to get it to actually hit. Otherwise, I had maybe 5 to 6 inches or so between the actual arm itself, at its closest setting or whatever. But regardless of that, one thing that no matter what I did in setup or anything, there is no way that you're going to get a 45-pound plate to not make contact with the upright. And so I only got the arm stuff. I only got the bicep and the tricep. And then of course it already comes with the stuff that you need to do, like the back extensions and the ab work stuff. I haven't messed with that or anything. I've just been kind of hyper focused on this one issue with the bicep thing. It doesn't do it. It's not an issue with the tricep thing. I don't think it's an issue with the leg stuff, but because I don't have that to set it up, I don't think it is. But I can't confirm that without actually having tested it myself. But the issue that they've run into, or that he's run into, and I can confirm with the 45-pound plate on the third weight horn or whatever, will make contact. I don't have 35s because nobody should. But I've got the 25-pound.
Well, no. Yeah, I can touch on that afterwards, or I don't know. I actually got my first set of 45s in my gym just this past weekend, actually, and it was a marketplace deal. So just
45s or 35s?
35s, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I have 35s, which again, not a big fan of them. So that's kind of why I kind of winced a little bit. I was like, well, I agree, but I'm kind of a hypocrite at the moment. But yeah, it's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So I have the 25-pound Rogue deep dish, and in some settings, some ways that I would have it set up that did feel reasonable, really like I could see myself setting up like this and it feeling good. The 25-pound plate would make contact with the upright. So that's something that we've been working through. I don't know what they're ultimately going to do with that. Gave them they actually had a couple of suggestions I tried out. I did find one of them to be satisfactory for me. Like for me, if it's just the bicep curl, I'm not doing a lot of those with a 45 on the top. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Right.
It's the whole thing itself is pretty heavy, even without weight on it. The 25 the testing that I did, by the time I got to the end of it, and I was getting to the place where it's like, I can't even, I don't know if you've noticed, I keep like wincing in pain and doing kind of weird things with my arms here. It's because I did so many tests today that I keep getting these spasms. I need to take some freaking magnesium or something because I'm getting these spasms in my elbows that are causing my biceps to tighten up because I did so many of those. And by the end of it, the 45s were getting so heavy, but I'm not opposed to loading it up, stacking it up with 25s, as long as the 25s don't hit the upright. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing that I did was I had actually ended up drilling another hole into the SmartArm apparatus thing to move it down a couple of inches. And that seemed to give me all the room that I needed, for the 25. Now, the downside, and I don't know, where this comes into play. And like one of the things that I had suggested there was like for people who maybe only have like calibrated plates, where the 10s are the same size as a 45, or they only have bumper plates. I mean, whether or not that's Prime's problem, I don't know, but they would definitely, I would like to see if they don't make any other changes, and they just, reissue the actual arm apparatus thing itself with a new hole in it, then it should come with a disclaimer that third one is not going to work with a large plate on
right?
it. Large plate on it, yeah. Otherwise, man, so far, like all the other stuff, man, I'll be honest, even like I already had in my mind, because I'd seen all this stuff that had been kind of generating buzz, whatever, the last couple of days over the Homeboys thing hitting the rack and stuff. I was a little bit disheartened. I felt like, I was not as excited. I felt like, I was, it was just discouraging, disappointing. But man, when I opened that box and I saw the actual, like the SmartArm system thing, like it's it's beautiful, man. I remember somebody had commented on one of the posts about how it looked like some cheap, Chinese, blah blah blah, whatever. And it doesn't. I mean, it looks like a formidable. I mean, it's pretty badass. Like if you could get that thing and just set it up on. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be on an upright. It would be ideal if it was on its own upright, kind of like the bulletproof thing, right? I mean, it's probably big and heavy, and I mean, it goes on easily. They do a really cool thing, Prime does, with their attachments, where the weight of the attachment as an advantage, or to its advantage, when you're putting it onto the uprights and stuff. Like you kind of, once you get the pin in, you just kind of let go and it falls into place, right? And this thing does the same. So it definitely makes that stuff easier. But again, it is a really cool device. It looks great. It feels good. Super smooth. The bicep curl thing, they're like independent of one another, and they're on bushings, and it's a nice, I mean, it's very expensive, but it's a very nice piece. You do get what you pay for in that, as long as you're not, don't need a bunch of 45s on your
for
on
your
the
bicep
top,
curls, right?
on the topmost one, on the number 3.
And the number 3, that's emphasizing like which portion of the lift?
I think as I'm doing this from memory based on the million reps that I did, that yeah, I believe that's in the first. I think number 3 on that one is the heaviest point, is at the very beginning of that. Yeah, on that, I think so. But yeah. So anyway, it's a good. I think if someone is listening to this and it's like hasn't been resolved yet or whatever, if you haven't, I mean, if you're holding out to order it, maybe wait until they get that fixed. If you're not, I'm sure there'll be a fix and they'll take care of it. I don't know. I would wait if I haven't already. And if you have, know that if you've gotten it and you've experienced it, just know that they are absolutely working on some sort of a resolution, and if there is some kind of mass frustration with that.
Okay.
But the first thing, the first setup thing, I couldn't replicate it. I'm not saying that he's crazy. I just, in some of the videos that he had sent, I did notice that his elbow was a little bit behind the point, the axis of rotation and stuff. So hopefully he didn't have time to play with it this evening, but hopefully that we can get him squared away on that. But anyway, so yeah, no, SmartArm, it's cool. It was a long time coming. It's something that I'm enthusiastic about, even though I only got it for the arm stuff. It already feels like I already am using it, and I'm like, I am never going to do a dumbbell. I mean, like just a barbell curl again, not a seated preacher curl thing. You know what I mean? Like with this, even if I mean, because you can also hook it up to the cable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got a little clip on the bottom or whatever. You can hook it up to your cable machine. So even if I'm doing like a cable loaded preacher curl, I'm going to be using that. I like that being fixed, locked into it, and it does feel really, really good. It's just the grips spin, the handles themselves spin, everything spins so like nice and free, and it just feels good. Feels like the machine, like the standalone machine on that. So anyway,
yeah. So with the SmartArm, would you say that it's primarily intended to be used like with a Prime Prodigy rack, or since it is using 3x3 hole, like 1-inch holes, what would you say like the compatibility level or possible compatibility issues might be with other racks?
I have a rep upright. I have a pair of rep uprights out there. I've been hyper focused on getting that figured out on the rep rack. The rep, I mean, not the Rogue rack. On the Prime rack. Sorry. I have all of those out there, but on the Prime rack, I've been so hyper focused on that I haven't even tested it for fitment on the Prime. Now, in everything else that I have tested on rep, they fit. And the reason why it fits without issue, it might be a little bit looser, but they do like on the sides that don't, like for left or right or something like that. Prime generally, and definitely with the SmartArm, they do include some stainless steel shims that you can put behind the UHMW, which is on all of the sides of the that make contact with the upright. But And then of course, if there's not enough of those, you can always use like, the painter's tape or something like
Right.
that
But
behind it
so
too. But
other than like, how snug or lack thereof of snugness that they might be on the upright, like don't most prime attachments also have like a pop pin or something in the back also?
they do. And so that's one of the things, and I don't know, I am certain that this is just happens to work out to their advantage, but the way that they do that, so they have a 1 inch pin, right? So you would have to have like the PR 5000 or a Rogue
Hmm.
monster rack or whatever, which the Rogue it's a true 3x3 1 inch hole with 2 inch spacing or whatever. The same as the Prime is. So there's never going to be an issue with Rogue. I mean, Rogue
Right.
and Prime compatibility. You're never going to have an issue with that. It really comes in when it's the metric stuff, like rep, for example. But with Prime, they use a 1 inch pin, so you have to have the PR 5000, and then they have a pop pin that holds it in place on the other side of it or whatever. So even if they run like in the same direction, which is where you use, I'm showing you the devil horns here to show you like normally where you have an issue, like say going from like Rogue to rep, is when you have
So the spacing's
holes
just
that
a
are
little off,
spaced,
yeah.
too far apart, and they're you run into an issue where it's a little bit off. The reason why the prime stuff doesn't is not usually subject to that is because when you have a little bit of play, because of the upright sizing. And then also the plunge pin itself is not a 1 inch plunge pin that's on center with the hole. It's a 5/8 inch plunge pin that is offset. So because of that little bit of play and because of the offset that just sits inside and hugs the side of the 1 inch hole, it allows it to fit on the metric or rep style uprights without any issues, without the alignment issue that you run into when you try to put two 1 inch pins through centers of holes that are not 6 inches apart or whatever. So,
Right.
so
Speaking of metric versus true 3x3 racks, do you have a hard stance on a preference there or anything like that? Because I have somewhat of a hot take here. That I personally think unless you're really going to be committed to a specific ecosystem, that I think the metric 3x3 racks, which what is that, what, like 75 millimeters, right, something like that.
75 by 75, yeah.
Yeah, I think those ones like are probably the better pick for people who have cost in mind, because then at that point you can use true 3x3 attachments. Yeah, you'll have a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of play, but it's a little bit easier to modify those to fit the smaller uprights than it is doing it the other way around. So like if you splurge with go all out with like a Rogue rack, right? But you're trying to you're like, all right, maybe I'll grab some rep or Titan attachments or bells of steel or something, or maybe not bells of steel because I guess they're true 3x3 now. But some import company attachments, those might not fit because they might be a little bit too snug. So you might have to be shaving down the UHMW or even take it off in order for them to fit. So personally, I mean, that was just something I was thinking about a while ago. I was like, well, for people who are a little bit more cost conscious and might want ultimate rack compatibility, the import racks might actually be the better purchase there for that reason specifically. But be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
That sounds like shower thinking. That's you were
Yeah.
like in the shower, like, now if I was doing this and I wouldn't know. I don't know. I have a little bit of both, I guess. Funny, I don't know if this is funny or not. Nerdy, to your point earlier about bells of steel being true 3x3, I think it's commonly understood with those who make custom like rack attachments and stuff that the ones to make them fit bells of steel as well as they can make them fit the 75 by 75 and the true 3x3, that those are actually 2.9 by 2.9. I don't know. I'm not a custom rack attachment manufacturer, but that's just what I've
Huh.
heard from those who
Yeah, I
are.
have not heard
And
that.
so it's still considered a 3x3, but I think I have heard that even in their attempt to make it that overseas or whatever, that's as close as they were able to get. But anyway, so we'll have to put that to the test sometime with some calipers or something. But or maybe somebody out there that has bells of steel and some of those calipers from like Harbor Freight or something, digital calipers or something, let us know if they are in fact 2.9 by 2.9, or do they ring in at 3 and 3. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really thought about that. Whenever I just, when I started this thing, I had this, like, whenever I really kind of went in with, like, I'm going to outfit, I went from, of course, the Bowflex stuff, got rid of that. I ended up starting to kind of pick up and curate some things from my commercial gym that I was going to as they were selling off stuff. So I had a few hammer strength things. And whenever I committed to, like, actually putting in a garage gym, I have enough self-awareness to know that I do get pretty like ecosystem and brand specific and stuff. At the time that I was making that decision, Rogue had the biggest selection of rack attachments and things like that. And I thought that going with Rogue, I would have like the best ecosystem, that that I'd be able to like rely on all the things fitting right and all that kind of stuff. I was afraid that like cross compatibilities, even though they might, like I remember like kind of breathing in that. Do you remember that post? And it's probably still very relevant today, but 2-rep cave or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That thing was like everybody's lifeblood for a while.
Yeah,
I don't,
until Garage Gym Reviews kind of did their own version of like rack compatibility.
I didn't know
yeah.
that. I'm still talking about 2-rep cave. I mean, this was
No,
5 years ago. Or
no,
whatever.
yeah,
That was a
it was
great,
on the Facebook page. That was one thing that like, I remember that 2-rep
yeah,
cave thing was like
yeah, yeah,
there was like a religious following with it, right? Anytime
yeah.
anyone asked about
A
attachments, but then now,
compatibility, you just like bop.
yep.
You just like boop them on the nose with 2-rep cave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that I remember like going through that and trying to figure out stuff. And I was like, man, I'm just going to go with Rogue and I'll know that all the stuff fits.
It's always
Little
Rogue.
much to my dismay, sometimes you get things from Rogue and they don't quite fit on their racks, but whatever. That's just how it is. Probably like that with everybody to some extent, right? But definitely during COVID, that was my experience. So when I switched over from Rogue to Prime, that was a consideration that I had, was that any attachments and stuff, I really was in this mindset of like, I'm not going to do the thing where I just replace all the stuff just because, and I did think that for a while I would be able to convert my 5/8 inch attachments to 1 inch and stuff like that. And I still use my Ghost J cups. They're 5/8 and they've got like 1 inch little
Mm-hmm.
sizers,
Adapters,
spacer
yeah.
things, adapters, yeah, from Buffalo Bully Fab, those stainless steel ones from there on that. And that's probably the only thing I have that is made for 5/8 that everything else has been either upgraded or replaced or whatever. But that was part of it, was I didn't really consider, and also at the time that I went with Prime, there just weren't a lot of options. I put the cable system ahead of everything else. And at that time, the only other thing out there was the Aries 1.0 or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I had already bought, man, I had bought like 3 or 4 of those like buy once, cry once. And if I had it to do all over again, Rogue racks, before I got to the place where I was now considering it was either the Aries or the, and I kind of went with the whole, like, I looked at them and like I said in another one, and not to knock anybody that has it or anything like that, but just on paper, one of them is obviously less expensive than the other, and it looks like it too. And I was like, I'm just going to buy the one that I know I'm not ever going to look at and be like, man, I should have bought the one with the nicer finishes and all that kind of stuff. I did another buy once, cry once thing, and haven't looked back. But that just happened to be also another thing, was all my stuff would fit and everything. But I can totally see your point on that. If you were looking at it, knowing all the things that would you go metric or the other? And it is easier to adapt.
Yeah, and I mean, like
that, but
with me, like I obviously I have a Rep PR 5000, right? And I do have a good amount of like true 3x3 attachments, like the Ghost J cups, like those are my daily drivers, and I don't mind that they're a little bit looser. Like I've never been bothered by it until I noticed that like back way back when they were first released by Rogue, and people were they were more purchased by the masses, right? At that point, people were complaining about how loose they were, and then people were coming out with fixes, and then people like Marcus from Twisted Barbell came out with videos showing how to fix the how much slop was in there. But for me, I never had an issue with that. I never bothered doing anything like that, because it's like, well, as long as, I'm able to still roll my bar back and forth and the J cup's not flipping up, it's fine with me.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
just anybody that might be considering, Rogue versus Rep, or maybe some of the smaller brands like Fringe, Vulcan, or some of those other ones. Just something to keep in mind there.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of rack attachments, I've noticed an increase, and this has been a long time increase. This isn't like an all of a sudden, but definitely more recently than I've seen a kind of a pattern of increase of interest in and new options for rack attached lateral raise machines, right? I've got one. I've had a few, but
Made a
I'm
few.
seeing them. I did. I made one. So a few years ago, that was like the only thing you could do, right? The only way you could get one was to DIY, right? At least I never saw an actual commercially available rack attached lateral raise, but it just seemed like one of those things that was so easy, or like the kind of seems like it would be kind of like how I feel about even like those those, what do they call, like captain's chair or whatever, Roman chair, captain's chair that people
Yeah.
do like leg raises and stuff on. I'm still surprised that I know you can use like with a mutant metals dip attachment or something like that, but I'm just surprised that for the sake of selling a product that people will pay money for, I'm surprised that I haven't seen a rack attached one of those. But the lateral raise machines, I feel like, is one of those that early on I saw that would be a potential product that I was surprised that it hadn't taken off or whatever. And then I had seen a video, a Kyle Kaizen DIY, also with the Do You Even Lift Bro podcast, which you should listen to if you haven't listened to that one lately. But he had made a DIY version, and it made me look at like what I was doing, and I was like, man, I can do better. So I like made my own, right? But I have seen them recently. I have one now from Savage. I had one from Amazon before. I think those kind of are one of those that pop up under a different name from time to time. I think Mikolo or Mikulo, is that how you say that? Revolt has one. And then I've also seen recently Bells of Steel just released one, or video of one or whatever. And I think I don't know. I haven't used it. I don't want to trash talk a product I haven't used or anything like that. I can see in the videos, at least on when they're putting it on that one, the machine they have that looks like maybe it has like 2x2 tubing or something like that. Like it maybe it's made for the 3x3, but it looks super wobbly on there. And then they've got it. They're doing the pec fly thing, and that's where I feel like in the ones that I've had or the ones that I've used before, I feel like that's where it goes awry with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody can make one that really does feel like a formidable pec fly thing. I'm skeptical. It's just that the mechanics of a lateral raise are different than a pec fly, and it's not just a matter of like turning the handles around. You know what I mean? Like it's just different. I don't know. Like Panada makes a machine or whatever that does the same thing, and maybe I just haven't. Maybe I need to stop playing around with Amazon stuff or whatever. But anyway, I think I'm interested. I'd be interested in. I wonder if any of like the bigger brands are going to come up with something like will Rep or Rogue or one of those like bigger brands come up with something, and if so, who do you think would be the first one that did of a side? I almost said side lateral raise. That's like a pet peeve of mine, by the way. Side and lateral mean the same thing, so there's no need to use both of those words in the same sentence. It's like having an ATM or versus an ATM machine. But anyway, sorry. What do you think? Who do you think? Do you think a bigger brand is going to pick up on something like that? And if so,
Yeah.
which one do you think it would be? No, man, I lost your audio. There it is, though. I mean, yeah, it might be your cable, but I don't know. No, I lost you, but when you start fondling it, I can hear all of that. Every bit of turmoil you've got on the surface of that microphone, just not the words going into it.
Okay, so more technical issues. So sorry for anyone who notices that there is inconsistent video and audio quality at various points throughout this episode. But yeah, for the lateral raise for like one of the major companies. So I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of consider Bells of Steel one of those premier companies. I guess maybe like obviously Rogue is the kind of the top dog in like the home gym space, right? Regardless of what anyone says there. And then kind of closely behind is Rep is like the main alternative. And then kind of after that, like it's like Titan, Bells of Steel, like Fringe. I consider all of these kind of in the same sphere. But I mean, I would say probably Rep, like they're probably going to be the next one to do it. Rogue, this doesn't seem like something they would come out as like a rack attachment. It feels like they would, at least in my opinion, it would probably be like a standalone machine, maybe more like the Temple of Gains type thing, but just making it like super overbuilt and making it basically commercial grade, but priced a little bit below commercial grade, so that home gym people, the home gym community, might have some interest in it if they're kind of already, looking at something like that. So, I mean, I would say rep, but otherwise, I don't really know. It seems like because like the Amazon type ones are already kind of pretty prevalent, I don't really see anybody really investing a lot more time outside of, bells of steel, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. It seems, I mean, and you're right. That's fair. I think with Bells of Steel, they are one of the major players. They're not a Mikolo or Amazon or Kang or whatever else you find
Hmm.
on there. You're right. I hadn't even considered that. I don't own anything from Bells of Steel, and in my mind, because I don't even look at their stuff very often, to be honest with you. Still kind of in my mind, there's still this company that like waits to see what is successful from what I would have thought like Rogue or Rep or whatever, like a bigger company, and then copies it and makes it cheaper. Maybe
Yeah,
not because
yeah.
they
I don't think that's really like as much of their MO like as much as it was before.
right. Okay,
Like
I can
they,
see
yeah,
that. I mean,
yeah, that,
even with this thing, they're not copying what everybody else is doing. They have their own little
mhm,
version of it,
yeah,
and they are doing something different with it. So that's fair. I'm glad that came up because I'd hate to spend
mhm.
the rest of my life
Yeah,
thinking that Bell's is, yeah,
no,
yeah.
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 Are like so obviously like have you ever bought anything from them? Like,
I did once bought a pair of uprights or
oh,
a upright. Maybe it was, I don't know if I got a pair or
yeah,
if I got one
yeah.
or what.
So yeah, I guess the reason I ask is because like I'm on their emailing list because I've bought a few things every once in a while and just never unsubscribed to theirs like I never do with any of the other newsletters that keep
Yeah.
spamming my inbox. But theirs actually like I think their newsletter is one of the better ones because they actually it's not just thoughtless marketing material half the time. A lot of times they will actually, tease stuff like before they throw it on social media and even on their website. They'll show sneak peeks of brand new products or they'll announce new things, but like, before they announce them anywhere else. So,
That's cool.
yeah, which I think this might have been one of those. And like another thing, which I'm surprised no one's talking about, I'm sure Gluck will get this and review it at some point, is like their self-propelled like stair climber. It's um, so kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, right? Like they kind of see what everyone else is doing and try to do something to copy it. That's kind of what I was thinking this was, but I could not find anything on the market that was even remotely close to this, other than like a Jacob's Ladder stair climber. So not the Jacob's Ladder like the traditional machine, but
Yeah.
like they have a stair climber. A Jacob's Ladder's like stair mount. I'm not sure what the exact name is, but basically, you don't plug it in, and it's basically powered by the user weight, right?
Right.
And that's what this Bells of Steel one is, which is seems really interesting. It's a little bit pricier. It's kind of like along the price point of like maybe a little bit below like Stepper,
Right.
but
Okay.
yeah,
Like
this one
five
it's
grand. Stepper's like 5 grand,
yeah,
right?
actually yeah, so it actually
Like
might
that
be
big one. Yeah.
yeah, it might be closer to 3 grand actually. So which still it's self propelled, so you would think it would be a little bit cheaper, but even then it was
Maybe they'll bring that to Home Gym Con and
yeah.
give it away for a dime at the end of the show
Yeah,
because
just
that sounds
really
pretty
interesting.
freaking
So,
sweet.
yeah, that
Yeah.
being said, like the Bells of Steel is credit here. I think they are doing, some cool stuff. I think they're kind of marching to the beat of their own drum almost, like
Well, that's good, man. I'm
as
glad
of
to hear
late.
that. I mean, because I don't pay that close attention. When you were telling me about this letter or this email newsletter thing, I was just sitting here trying to remember the last one that I've opened, and the last one that I can remember opening was like video footage of them. Maybe it was not video footage. Maybe it was just images of their version of the Oak Club uh, little basket or whatever, and like the
Hmm.
basketball something, which their version looks better than the Oak Club basketball thing. I still don't understand the basketball thing, but I don't have to. It's not for me to understand, right? It's for me to accept that other people want basketball hoops in their garage gyms and they want options and they get those. And that's what we love about this home gym space. But anyway, so another one with just before I leave the rack attached lateral raise thing, I do like those. By the way, I know some people are like, just use a dumbbell, but I like it is different. It really is. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying that one is better than the other or anything like that, or that you're going to get like super stretch at the bottom. I don't really even think that the I don't think that this is the side delt is a stretch muscle, but anyway, it does feel different, and especially like the way that the one that I have that allows you to move it up and down the upright and stuff quickly on it's on like a glider thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it kind of works similarly to how the Prime SmartArm system works. Like when you change the pivot point of the thing in the relation to your shoulder and the where the weight itself is situated or oriented through the range of motion, or where the starting point of the weight is in relation to your shoulder and all that stuff, it will change the resistance, like where the peak of the resistance is. So I get a few inches there to kind of play with that, at least with the Savage one that I set up. But anyway, what I was going to say is I also saw that I think Rohrman Strength, Rory, I don't know if you know
Mm-hmm.
who that
Yep.
is.
Rory
I
Ellis
think,
Roman Strength.
yeah, I think he is working on one also from what
Huh.
I've heard. I haven't seen it,
I
but
would, it
anyway,
would, yeah, it would make sense with his handles. You know, like it seems like those would be a match made in heaven with
yeah,
a machine like that.
that's similar. So his handles are they're basically a variation of like the Rogue AH1 handle that Rogue has or has had. I don't know if they still have those or not, but they used to make those for the jammer arms, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
put them on the end in that little brass bushing area
Mm-hmm.
on the end of the Rogue jammer arm, and it would give you a little bit of articulation there. The difference between his and those is that his give you like 360 degrees of rotation, where the Rogue one, because it was on like an elongated shackle that went on both sides of it, there was a stopping point at some point. So for like for with the Rogue AH1s, that's what I used in the lateral raise that I had DIY'd a few years ago. That's what served as my handles, and it did kind of give that same like freedom, but it hit a stopping point, and then it just became a fixed handle at that point. So I could see his without not having that shackle to stop it at a certain point. I could see his handles being ideal on a lateral raise machine like that. So pretty cool. Pretty excited to see that. So another topic, another thing that has been going on here is I think we talked a little bit about Kabuki
Mm-hmm.
before, and since then, Rich Galgano, the guy behind Kabuki Power, announced the discontinuation of several of their products, which we had already all kind of seen and recognized. But then also he announced the official rebirth of the new found company called Takeover Strength,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of ringer to that was, or the thing that was the most surprising, I think, for everybody was that he has brought in guy from
Uh,
Havoc,
yeah, Derek McCormick,
Derek McCormick from Havoc. The guy that makes the
Triad.
the triads, the things that they had like a Kabuki branded version of or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So he's going to be running Takeover Strength, and taking over and kind of working through those products. Now, so that's pretty cool. Something that was a little bit out of left field, I thought. I mean, not I
Yeah,
mean, they already had a partnership, I guess, but
yeah, the like Derek being in charge, yeah, that was interesting. I wonder how that came out to be, but like the whole takeover strength thing, he mentioned that on the Garage Gym podcast episode with Jake, the interview there, that was eventually going to come, but basically what he was unsure of at the time was whether or not Kabuki would still exist, like as kind of its own thing, but
right,
takeover was coming regardless. So at this point, it seems like, or not seems like, he confirmed it that Kabuki's basically done. Like that's no longer going to be at least a company under his ownership, I guess. And everything Kabuki is either going to be discontinued, licensed out, or with a takeover strength. So the Cadillac bar and the Transformer bar, those are being licensed out with Rogue. Rogue's manufacturing those already. And what was surprising to me is that the Transformer X bar is seemingly going to be produced by Rogue also, which is interesting. I have the Transformer X bar. It's I want to say a little better than the existing or the older version. in the way, like I guess maybe not better. It's just different.
That
And
doesn't say much because you hated
yeah,
that. Like,
yeah. So like the you get less customizability, I guess, with the positions, right? This one is a little bit more. The X is a little bit more user friendly in the way that like it only has like one front squat position, one goblet squat position, and so forth for every other squat variation it has, right? So you can't set it to difficulty 1, 2, and 3, which with the older version of the transformer bar, it's like if you put it in the front squat setting, but you moved it into the easiest position, it was hardly a front squat, right? Like it kind of was, but it's not really a front squat. But if you moved it out to 3, it was like, yeah, then it was like a very dramatic front squat where the weight was super far in front of you instead of, like kind of like in line with like your chest, like a regular front squat would be with the barbell. So
is
it,
it
it, it
is it really a front squat if you don't leave with bruises across your chest
right.
and regret?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of that guesswork out. So that's the way that I think it might be a little bit better for some people. But the issue I had with it was the build quality. So obviously I had a broken knob out of the box, and then when they
Is this the X or
the
the?
X,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay.
yeah,
Huh.
the X. So they had a broken knob out of the box. They
And did you
replaced
buy that one through Rogue or through
well it through Kabuki, yeah. So it's
Kabuki?
not,
Okay.
yeah.
This
Rogue's
is
not
oh
for
okay. This is only
yes, yeah.
new
So
for them to
yeah,
start. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, they haven't started. Rogue hasn't started making the X yet. So yeah, there's just a bunch of issues with the X bar, like with everything else Kabuki. That's all the manufacturing issues they've had with their stuff since kind of Rich kind of took over. So
Well, the good thing
um,
with Rogue taking over is that they do have customer support and they
mhm.
are proven with that. And so if there are issues with the X manufactured by Rogue, you'll have the
Right.
that.
Yeah. So
So
yeah. The it takes that guesswork out, but then also some of the positions like were a lot better, right? Because of that, like, but like some of the positions were actually worse. So
yeah,
on the X bar versus on the Transformer X versus the V3, so like the low bar position and the hinge position were not very good. So it's like I'm wondering if Rogue is going to improve, like if they're going to change anything, or if they're just straight up licensing
I
it
don't know.
in its current iteration. But no, that was interesting.
Well,
Obviously, the Cadillac is still going. Yeah,
I know Kurt really liked the
Kurt
V3.
Walker.
If I'm Kurt Locker, yeah, I wonder if he will get his hands on the X and give his thoughts on that and how they compare also.
hmm Yeah. So that's Transformer and the Kabuki bar. But then like the shoulder rock and like a lot of those recovery, like the boomstick and things like that, all of those are going to be sold under Takeover
Right.
along with the squat saddle. So those are going to still exist in some capacity, but
Yeah. Right.
I don't really have any comments there. I've never used any of those, so I don't know. Do you have any thoughts there?
No, I'm laughing at your face whenever you say squat saddle because
Squat saddle.
because it seems like a silly product, man.
It
It really
is.
does,
It is super gimmicky.
But
It it, it I mean, okay, maybe not super gimmicky. So like that's actually I think the squat saddle as a standalone product is good if you use it to upgrade the pad on the Kabuki V3 bar or on the Transformer V3 bar. So
right.
it makes it a little bit better and a little bit more stable, I guess, like in a lot of the positions. But for all of the other stuff that they said you can do with it, like put it on a straight bar, I tested that. It's terrible. Using it with the belt squat like defeats the purpose of a belt squat. Makes no sense. Using it as like a as an attachment so you could do weighted dips and pull-ups, like it's just awkward, like putting it on and having like all the straps around you, then suspending the weight and trying to adjust the straps so they're just the right height so that the weight is not like hitting the ground. It's like just use a dip belt at that point. Like I've tested everything with the squat saddle, and like literally the only good use I found for it was upgrading the V3, upgrading the pad on the V3 if you have that bar. So I mean, that's the reason I'm making the face, is just because it's kind of a silly product in my opinion.
Yeah.
Matthew
Yeah.
Porter, he actually was using it with the Smith machine, and he actually has some handles that he purchased from can't remember the company right now. I'm trying to look it up. There is another company that makes like barbell handles
Uh-huh.
that you can put on a straight bar to kind of use it as a safety squat bar. So Matthew Porter's kind of, he rigged something up there and he said it worked, relatively well. So could
I
be
like that
something.
concept. I mean, I
Yeah.
did that. I did try to put my Prime SSB on the Bulletproof Fitness VTS Lite, and I did like the movement, even though the execution of those two components or whatever was a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can't. There's a lot of
It's,
stuff gets in the way.
yeah.
That particular bar is pretty busy.
Yeah. It's supposed to mimic
But
like a hack squat is like what Matt was trying to do. But I think the issue he had was like, yeah, it's great, like if you're pushing straight up, but like with a hack squat, you kind of want a little bit of
yeah,
that back pad,
yeah.
and yet not having that, doesn't fully mimic it. It's
Yeah,
but
even with the SSB, when I did have it set up that way, and I did put like a slant board or whatever to try to sort of see, but you're not, on a hack squat, you're on a 45 degrees or so linear motion there. With this, you can put your feet 45 degrees out, but you're still moving up and down. You know what I mean? You're basically
Mhm.
just rolling into it. And
Mhm.
I don't think that's good for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you're not getting
Mhm.
more like hamstring activation stuff, but just for using the bar like an SSB style bar, having it in there, kind of like like a Mars bar or something like that, would be pretty sweet on a um on a Smith
Smith
machine.
machine.
Does feel pretty cool because you're so locked in. You know what I mean? To everything, you can just pump them out. And I was like, man, I really wish I could make this thing work. But yeah, you're not. I mean, unless you can adjust the angle of your Smith machine, like if you had the VTS on a set of jammer or like long jammer arms or something like that, you're not getting like a true hack squat out of that.
Mhm.
So you probably end up just hurting yourself or something if you got too much weight on there and try to do it with a even with a like a squat wedge or whatever. But anyway, so let's see. Questions from the community. Let's move into this little segment. This will be the last segment. And there wasn't a whole lot of just a variety of activity. Now, there was one that went up today that I thought was kind of interesting. Guy says, my wife set my gym stuff on fire while I was at church with my kids. There's no backstory, just a psychopath. And I don't know if this is true or not. I don't even care. I mean, I do. If it is true and you're in a toxic relationship, you need to get out of it. Uh, like dial 988 or whatever. I think that might be like the suicide hotline. But definitely get yourself some help. Get a file a police report. Get your kids out of that.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. Like, how are the
get,
comments on there? Was there a lot of reactions or
there was a lot of like,
laughing
yeah,
emojis?
is this still available?
Uh,
There's totally a backstory and that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. That being
But
said, have you ever seen any of those? Like everyone jokes about it, right? It's like, oh yeah, like yeah, this couple gets a divorce, so they're selling off their significant other's gym stuff. I actually came across one of those the other day, like a real one. Unfortunately, it was only a treadmill.
nice.
Yeah, like the description, was like, oh, he cheated, so I'm selling his stuff, and the only thing that she had listed at the time was just a treadmill, and didn't look like there was a home gym or anything. But I was like, huh, it turns out these actually do
Um,
show up.
I want to. Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard that legend, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know that I've responded to or found that. Now, I have known people whose ex have gotten rid of their things, and I've known, yeah, I've seen that happen. I just haven't ever benefited from somebody else's demise or anything like that
Right.
on it. But interestingly enough. So next topic, though, within that same questions from the community, something that has really been kind of overwhelming has been the impact on the home gym equipment sales and purchases and things like that as it pertains to the tariffs, right? And this is not a new topic. It's just kind of been a little bit more in the been coming up a little bit more lately and stuff because we're kind of in that find out phase, right, of the
Uh-huh.
tariffs where we're now couple of days into flexing our fists around and all that kind of stuff, and so people are amped up, and I don't want to bring this up to give the impression. I don't do well with like fear mongering or anything like that. So it's not really my intention here. Like, I don't want anybody to get the impression that we're bringing up or talking about tariffs and stuff to try to make you go buy things. That's not, but if you do, use MWPig5. No, I'm just kidding. But about a couple of months ago, Peter Keller, and again, I'm hesitate to even use his name because I've used it in every one of these podcasts and it sounds like I have a crush on the guy. I don't, by the way. But
You
he had
replaced your Bill Henninger daddy
Yeah,
issues onto Pete, right?
Bill Henniger is no longer daddy. It's now Pete. God damn it. But he posted a video after I think, as I recall, maybe my memory is a little bit foggy. I'm like 44 years old now, and I just got a new dad. But a couple of months ago, I believe Peter was on a podcast with Coop, Garage Gym Reviews. I think that's how that went. Afterward, he had posted a video. I think maybe I got that detail wrong. I don't know. I know Coop had done a one of those.
Yeah, it was a video.
Prices are going up because of tariffs and all that kind of stuff. Buy stuff now thing. But Pete, in response, posted about a 14 or 15-minute video to kind of give dummies like us a quick, brief overview of what the tariffs are, what they mean, how they impact manufacturers, how they impact consumers. And I found it really, really interesting. So I wanted to share it here. I've watched the stupid thing like 3 or 4 times just so that I can sort of speak on it with a little bit of confidence, but I can't do it as well as he did. It's really interesting. And so we talked about this, and I'm just gonna upload the video here and let you guys listen to it as well. It's really interesting. He does use some visual aids, and it's not visible aids. Okay. I'm not saying he's got severe weight loss or whatever visible aids might be, but visual aids, some charts and graphs and things like that. So if you're an Uber nerd and you want to check that out, definitely watch this on YouTube. You can, well, I guess if you're already here, then you're not going to scroll to the last few minutes. But anyway, watch it on YouTube. It's really interesting. Peter, if you're here, thanks. We stole your footage. Otherwise, Mark, do you have anything else before I move into the Peter Keller tariff impact video?
Yeah, so kind of like to the point you were making, right? Not trying to fear monger anyone here or anything, but if you are kind of like you've been on the fence about anything, might be a good idea to maybe consider buying sooner rather than later, maybe on a few things, like obviously don't just go COVID buy a bunch of stuff, right? So like the main things, I guess, that are more prevalent, I guess, in this day and age that I don't think Peter mentions in his video. He just kind of gives an overview of tariffs, like how they work in general. But 25% tariffs apparently are going to start 30 days from now in Canada. So I mean that'll affect Oak Club, Irwin Fitness, and like those kind of like those companies specifically. And then there's going to be an additional 10% hike on Chinese imports. So so that's going to be your Reps, Titans, things like that. So just the heads up, those are likely coming.
Well,
but
there are also others like Rogue, for example. They import steel from Canada, and
right, yeah.
Then also they also offer products that are made overseas, and also components that are made overseas and stuff too. So I would expect that it would and this video actually goes over a lot of that stuff too. So it's really interesting. I think it'll be a little bit more widespread than just your Titan or Amazon stuff. So anyway, check it out and let us know in the comments if you found it to be interesting, or if we made any grave mistakes, or if I should consider calling someone else daddy next time.
So I thought that I would do a video on tariffs. So Coop had mentioned that price increases are coming. You guys are even seeing a bunch of them roll through right now. I want to explain how tariffs work and why they're causing cost increases. Okay, so tariff impact. The existing tariff on most of the products that are being brought in and sold to you guys as barbells, squat racks, weight plates, all that stuff, is at about 12.1%, which is in itself a tariff hike from Trump's first administration. So prior to the tariff hike, the tariff on this stuff was actually 4.6%. And then there was a tariff hike put in place, and so now it's 12.1%. So let's assume that we've got a product that is being sold for $100, And I'm just using round numbers here to make it super easy. So $100 is what you guys are paying to buy something. That probably costs the company that is selling it to you about $40 in China. So if they're buying it from overseas, from China for $40, they then have to get it to the US in order to ship it to you. And so the inbound freight on an ocean container is maybe $5 on that. And then there is the duty. So the duty is not paid on this $5 here, it's paid on this $40 here, and it's paid at a rate of 12.1%. And that tariff goes to the US government. The importer, AKA me, I'm paying that amount to the US government. China's not paying it. Nobody else is paying it. It is the importer that's paying it directly to the US government. So 12.1% times $40 is $4.84 for the duty. Then they have what's called landed cost. So landed cost is how much it costs to get that product, which is $40, plus the ocean freight, which is $5, plus the duty, which is $4.84. And then that brings the product, boom, to a warehouse in the US. So the landed cost in this case is $49.84. That product is being sold to you, the customer, for $100. That means that the gross margin on that product is about $50.16. In other words, this gross margin, that $50, is what an importer has to pay for all their overhead, to pay the salaries of their employees, to pay any rent, to pay any advertising, all that stuff. They're using this $50.16. And by the way, if they're selling you the product for $100, then that means they've got about 50% margin in that product. So that's how people think about it. All right. So one of the tariff levels that Trump has talked about in connection to Chinese goods is 60%. And then we'll come to this next one in a moment of 200%. So let's say that Trump puts on a 60% tariff. Let's see what happens in that situation. So we've got the same cost in China of $40 for the product. We've got the same ocean freight of $5 to get it over here to the US. And then tariff jumps from $4.84 to $24. And the landed cost, the cost of getting that thing to somebody's dock here in the US, not to yours, to the importer's dock, is $69. So it's an increase of about $20 from about $50 to about $70 based on that tariff being 60%. If the importer sells it for $100, the same price, their margin goes from about $50 to about $31, or going from 50 points of margin, give or take, to about 31 points of margin. Now, I will tell you that most companies in our space are not making just like oodles and oodles and oodles of money. And so most companies in our space are not going to be able to just eat that loss of margin. So what they're going to do is they're going to raise the price. And so let's say they want to still make about the same amount of margin as they were making before the tariff increase went into place. They're going to raise the price from $100 to $138, which will still allow them to make the same percentage of margin as they were making before. And that price increase is 38.44%. So this, when people say China's not going to pay the tariffs, you, the customer, are going to pay the tariffs, they're actually correct. And so companies are going to try to make up that loss of margin by increasing price. And like I mentioned, if the tariffs go up to 60%, then they're probably going to increase their prices by about 38%, which is quite a bit. So instead of buying that same product for $100, you're going to be paying about $138 for that product. Okay, so now what if the big number happens and Trump puts in a 200% tariff on these products? So again, price in China is $40. Ocean freight is $5, same as all these other places here. But now instead of being about $5 for the tariff is about $80. So that brings the landed cost to $125. So if the company were to sell that product for $100, which is the price they were selling it under the existing tariff scheme, they would lose $25. And believe me, nobody runs a company to lose money. Even if you're a not-for-profit, you still can't lose money over and over again, or you will go out of business. So if the company wants to make the same percentage margin as they were making under the old tariff system, they're going to need to raise that price from $100 to $250, or a price increase of 150% over their previous price. So you used to be able to buy the product for $100, but if these huge tariffs go into effect, you're going to pay $250 for that product. But Peter, you say, I'm going to buy the product from a U.S. manufacturer and I'm going to avoid all this. Well, you are also going to see price increases from U.S. manufacturers. And here's a quick reason for why you're going to see those price increases from the U.S. manufacturers. Number one, inflation. So pre-pandemic, inflation in the U.S. was at 2%, give or take, year over year. And then, of course, we had all this pandemic inflation. So let me tell you that from buying these products in China or overseas, there was also inflation. But then when the pandemic demand and period kind of went away, there was deflation back down to about where prices were pre-pandemic. So you might have heard people talk about inflation being transitory. So in China, buying product to export out, inflation actually was transitory. There was kind of a price level, and then price levels went up, and then price levels went back down. That has not really been the case in the US. Inflation came, prices went up, and they haven't really come back down. So we still are seeing inflation effects from previous for U.S. manufacturers, because we manufacture some products here in the U.S., we manufacture some overseas, so we're seeing the price impacts on all those places. So that's number one. Number two is a lot of even U.S. manufacturers are using Chinese or foreign components. So there's a big U.S. manufacturer who recently, American made, had made a bunch of bones about that a couple of years ago, actually, and it turned out that they were using primarily Canadian sourced steel. So you might have heard about some China tariffs, probably also have heard about Canada tariffs. And Canada supplies a lot of raw materials. So if the raw materials that are going into something rise up in price, then the whole item is going to raise in price as well. Also, a lot of things like pulleys and wire cables and things like that, those come from overseas. And so those are potentially going to go up in price as well. Now, number three, foreign goods. So we talked about Chinese and foreign components. A lot of U.S. manufacturers actually mix in Chinese or foreign products as well as American-made products. So right now, we're not talking about the components. We're talking about the whole product themselves. So obviously, if there's a foreign-sourced, complete finished product, then it's going to be subject to those tariffs that we talked about just a moment ago. And so prices are going to need to rise as the input costs increase as well. Now, number four is the substitution effect. And all right, I studied a little bit of economics in school. My teacher said I'd be able to use it. How's when I can use it? So thank you so much for watching. All right. Substitution effect. So this is my demand curve. So right here, we've got price per unit, high price per unit, low price per unit. And then down here on this axis, we've got number of units sold. Few units sold here, a lot of units sold there. Now here's the demand curve. And so the curve is kind of curving down like this. What that basically means is the higher the price per unit of whatever you're selling, the fewer units you will sell. The lower the price per unit that you're selling, the more units you're going to sell. So it's pretty basic economics. It just means that when something is expensive, you buy less of it. If something is cheaper, you tend to buy more of it. That's all it's saying. So with the substitution effect, and I didn't even bother trying to draw this one out. This is a bunch of, demand curvy stuff. But basically what the substitution effect says is when there is a substitution that rises in price, then the price of the good that there's a substitute for can rise in price as well and still sell the same number of units. So what I'm trying to say here is, let's say that you're looking at a squat rack and you've got one squat rack, you want to buy a squat rack. And you're looking at one squat rack that's made in the USA, and you're looking at one squat rack that's made overseas. maybe the made in USA squat rack is say $1,000 and the overseas squat rack is $800. If the overseas squat rack rises from $800 to $1,000, the USA made squat rack might actually rise from $1,000 to $1,200 and still sell the same amount, but the USA vendor just makes more money because they're able to sell the same amount at a higher price point because the substitute that they are competing with has also risen in price. So now we're going to go away from the graphs. Don't worry about that. But I'm so excited that I was able to bust out some of my economics. So substitution effect. And then finally, number 5, whether you're an American manufacturer or a foreign manufacturer or whatever, every company has to make their margins in order to continue on. Contrary to what you might believe, gym equipment is a pretty difficult business. It's not, nobody is taking showers and money and carrying around a bunch of diamonds in their pockets and stuff like that. Everybody who's in this business is doing it for some level of the love. Absolutely. But you have to make your margins in order to continue on with your business. And so there was a little bit of brouhaha that I saw recently over a certain US manufacturer that has raised the price of their functional trainer squat rack several times recently. And there's been a lot of speculation as to why they're doing this. I don't know. I don't work for them. I don't own them. I don't have anything there. But what I'm going to say is that they've got to make their margins. They were trying to hit a price point. They hit the price point at some point, but they were not making the margins that they needed to run their business. And so at that point, as an owner of a company, if you have a product that people like, but you're not making your margins on it, you've got 2 options. Oh, let's say 3. You keep selling it, option 1, and not making your margin. This sucks because you're doing a lot of activity and you're not making your profits. And so you can't really keep reinvesting in R&D in the business and, keeping the lights on, paying your employees, stuff like that. It's a really bad option, honestly, even if the product is great. So you just keep doing what you're doing and you do the slow swirl down the hole into the drain. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that you stop making the product. Okay, I can't make our margins. Even though this product's amazing, we're going to kill it. We're not going to make it anymore. And then option number 3, which is the one that most people go with, we're going to raise our prices until we can hit our margins. And so we can be a sustainable company. And instead of going down the drain, we're going to virtuous cycle up. So, all right. So let's review. We talked about the tariffs impact on, messing up here. We talked about the tariffs impact on the price that you're going to end up paying for your gym equipment. And we also talked about how it is the importer that pays the US government the tariff, but then that tariff is going to be passed along to you, the customer, in the form of higher prices. Then we also talked about why this is going to affect US manufacturers as well as people who are sourcing from overseas. And then finally, I got to bust out a little bit of my economics and geek out there. So now, what does this mean to you? So what it means to you is we're going to be entering a time frame of rising prices again. So, do with that what you will. For me personally, if there are a few things that I want now and I got the cash lying around to get them, I'm buying them so that I can pay less now rather than later. But again, it's back to you. I'm not trying to sell you anything here. I'm just trying to educate you. So I hope that this was helpful. And if you like economics, I don't know, leave a comment below or something like that. Rock and roll. It's Peter.